Bhagavad Gita, Chapter 18. The Way to Liberation Through Renunciation. So, this is the last chapter of the Bhagavad Gita and the story of the Lord's song. And it was my hope to portray this story as a means of a metaphor into one's life. And I hope I did a good job of making it relevant for you. After this project, I'm going to work on another project after this, where I'm going to go into the life of Christ. So we did the breath work, and I did a whole course now in the Bhagavad Gita, and now through the life story and the parables of Christ, and connecting the dots here. That I think that the life teaching actually of Christ, if Christ is viewed as the self, what Krishna is referring to, it makes a lot more sense from that perspective, which is why I'm introducing the Gita first as kind of the keys to understanding, because it requires faith to actually understand the life story of Christ. The entry fee is what is called is faith. The last chapter we covered were the 3 divisions of faith. You have full of faith and goodness, where you're not attached to the results. You're strong faith in what's being said, or you're attached to the results, or you're just completely ignorant and you'll do whatever you want. So this will make sense. Now, the path that's going to be outlined in this chapter, liberation through renunciation, the way to it, will connect the dots. So I'll show you how these metaphors actually connect later on. So we'll begin on last chapter that Arjuna, he's received the entire discourse from Krishna, and now he's winding it down. He has the courage now to actually fight and engage in the battle. And he decides to act. He has some last questions, though. He says to Krishna, I desire to know the true nature of actually what is renunciation and what is letting go. You talk about as distinguished from each other, Almighty Hrishikesha. And Krishna, he says to Arjuna that the renunciation of your works induced by the desire is understood by the sages to be renunciation, while the surrender of the fruits of all works is called letting go by the wise. So this is a small distinction here, that the term renunciation is you're renouncing the actions that are based on attachment and desire. That these are let go. While as letting go is determined by releasing of the fruits that one is attached to. So it's related to the paths of wisdom. The path of wisdom requires renunciation. The letting go of actions and resting within the city of 9 gates. While the karma yogi, he lets go and releases the attachment to the fruits. But also in other chapters that these are actually one and the same thing. So he continues, some philosophers, they declare that all actions should be relinquished as they're evil. People, they talk about that and very much like good, evil, to not act. This is not what Krishna is saying here. That's not. And then others say that works of sacrifice, gifts, and austerity should not be given up. So the dilemma that Arjuna was pondering was, you say not to act, but then even austerities and actions and the sacrifices and worships that you refer to require some form of action. So this is the resolution of the paradox here. And Krishna clarifies this by saying, learn from me, Arjuna, O best of the Bharatas, addressing his lineage, the truth about renunciation. For the renunciation is declared to be of three kinds of tiger mind. And this is actually, the term here is relinquishment. The truth about relinquishment. Relinquishment is the letting go and giving back. Giving it all back, I think, is a term I like. That's a term that the Buddha also uses for his 16th stage of Anapanasati. The mindfulness of breathing sutta is just that, of letting go. So the acts of sacrifice, austerity, and gift, Krishna recommends to not give up, to continue doing these, to continue acting for the benefit of others. But verily, the sacrifice, gifts, and austerities, they're purifiers of the wise. So even these actions, however it should be done without attachment and desire for the fruit, this, O Arjuna, is my conclusive and final judgment. So he's saying to continue acting for the purification of oneself, which was the entire message of the Gita, actually summarized. Through the karma yogi, he tells Arjuna to act in the battle, purifying himself in the process. So, here, the three kinds of renunciation. The renunciation of duties that are obligatory is not proper. It means these include like family responsibilities, feeding the poor, taking care of your body, hospitality to guests, to loved ones, maybe even wishing somebody happy birthday. These, if it's conducive and wishing somebody happy birthday, if it helps you to let go, to surrender your pride, that purifies you. That's a purifier of action. So say those acts should not be given up. No. The renunciation of obligatory action is not proper. See, its abandonment from delusion is declared to be of the nature of tamas, which is ignorance. One doesn't do those things because you're ignorant, or maybe you rationalize with yourself that by me actually showing compassion to another, I'm going to be weak. But then this is a form of self-attachment. That's not the letting go that is referred to, or attached to a result of a position. The renunciation of man, says Krishna, who abandons a duty from fear of physical suffering because it's going to be painful, is of the nature of rajas. So we went into these three distinctions of faith in the last chapter, tamas, rajas, and sattva. Might be able to go back to that and refresh it, because this chapter is an amalgamation of these divisions of how everything you do, these divisions of faith, are carried into all your actions. Even the recommendations of charity, austerities, worship, etc., can fall into these lines. So he's saying here that a renunciation from like letting go of action because you're afraid of pain is still not pure. It's still an attachment there, and it does not bring forth fruit. Say, a man who's gone beyond the pairs of opposites, that's sattva, that's goodness. So when a man performs an obligatory action only because it should be done, because it ought to be done, and he renounces all the attachment and the fruit, his renunciation, O Arjuna, is characterized by sattva, goodness. So the character of sattva, that which is good, the wise man of renunciation, who is endowed with sattva, endowed with goodness, and whose doubts are dispelled, never hates a duty that is disagreeable, nor feels attachment to a duty that is agreeable. So he goes beyond the pairs of opposites of agreeable and disagreeable, does it for the benefit of another. He lays down his life as the worship itself, as an instrument for the good. So an unenlightened man is characterized by this as such. That it is indeed impossible for an embodied being to renounce action entirely. All beings have to act. But he who renounces the fruit of action is regarded as one who has actually renounced. So that is letting go. You release the attachment to the fruit of the action. You are then a true karma yogi. See, and it was kind of why I brought up the Christ in the beginning, because you understand karma yoga will help vivify what actually Christ meant by being in the world but not of it. It illuminates that understanding. So I think the two are compatible. They're very compatible. Same with the Buddha Dharma. They're different. They explain different timelines, different periods, but renunciation is renunciation. The entry door is still faith, and the divisions of faith are being explained. So I like this because there's recognition from my own experience that there's no contradiction here. They're not saying contradictory things. So what is served by renunciation of action? So the threefold, the fruit of your action is you get either pleasurable, unpleasurable, or neutral. And these are the results that accrue after death to those who have not renounced, but who have not renounced the fruit of the actions. They've not let go to attachments. But none of these happen to the sannyasin, or the one who has renounced all action itself. He's renounced activity, so he doesn't acquire the pleasurable, unpleasurable, and mixed results. So the ignorant person, thus, Krishna says, to learn from me. Learn, O mighty Arjuna, the 5 causes that bring about the accomplishment of action, as declared in the philosophy of knowledge called Samkhya. I went over the philosophy of Samkhya, I believe in chapter 14. I went in depth to the 24 principles, what comprise it. And this is understanding of knowledge, of what the doer is and who the knower of the doer is, or what the field is and the knower of the field. And this understanding puts an end to all action, for one rests in the knower. So these, the body, the doer, the 5 senses, the vital breaths, and the presiding deity. Let me see what that translates as. Okay, and then so deity is the 5th. Consciousness. So the body, the senses, the doer, the life breath, and the deity, consciousness, are the 5 that contribute to action. There's no action without these 5 taking place in it. And it says, whatever a man performs with his body, speech or mind, whether right or wrong, these 5 are its causes. So that being so, the man of a perverted mind, who on account of impure understanding, he looks on the self, the absolute, as the agent he does not see. So if he sees the self as the doer, he's not seeing correctly. He's not seeing this. Or he doesn't understand the field. The field is the doer. And that which it was just explained is what is actually doing. This is nature. So he who is free from the feeling of I, and whose understanding is undefiled, though he slays these men, he slays not, nor is he bound. So we can also say that the deity is the I consciousness, the ahamkara, and which leads to understanding and the knowledge of the field and the knower of the field. So the unchangeable self, which is the one who knows the field, the nameless. Knowledge, the object of knowledge, and the knower form the threefold incitement to action. And the instrument, the object, and the doer are the threefold basis for action. So, knowledge is the field and the knower of the field. The object of knowledge is the highest imperishable self, and the knower is recognition of the self, Brahman. So, recognition of this is what incites action to take place. It's what stirs the field. And the instrument, which becomes the body, the object, which is the object of action, one of the sight, sound, taste, touch, or smell, and the doer, which is the I consciousness, are the threefold basis of action. And the knowledge by which one indestructible substance is seen in all beings, undivided in the divided, know that knowledge is of the nature of sattva. So when you recognize the doer, and you see the doer in all things, this is the knowledge. You recognize that which is imperishable within the heart of all beings, which is completely pure and beyond all action. Then one is, this is the knowledge that is characterized by goodness, sattva, which you're not seeing multiplicity. You're seeing one consciousness, one awareness residing within the heart of all beings, like the ocean. Okay, but the knowledge that's characterized by rajas is when you see a multiplicity. And you see different beings, you see different states. And this, in our world, is predominantly where a lot of energy goes, into the rajasic quality of being everywhere, doing more, having to attain. This is very rajasic, and I relate to this. It's fiery. So, but that knowledge through which one sees in all beings various entities of different kinds as differing from one another, know that knowledge is of the nature of sattva. So you see different qualities now. Whereas in sattva, you see wholeness. You see beings that are undivided. You don't even see beings out there. You see the self. So knowledge characterized by tamas, and that knowledge that is confined to one single whole, as if it were the whole, one single effect, as if it were the whole, and is without reason, without foundation in truth, and trivial. That knowledge is declared to be of the nature of tamas. So this is, you attribute any one thing, and it's not kind of inverted. So you see multiplicity. You say, oh, the cup is God. Cup is Brahman. The phone. My phone is Brahman. Within the multiplicity, now, you see, you just attribute that as the whole. Like, everything is in my heart. It doesn't quite could, because the knowledge isn't there. The knowledge of sattva isn't there, just the intellect. And this is what is to be seen. That to actually recognize the wholeness that is there, that is undivided, pure, and uncontained, this is the knowledge that is being guided to reside in sattva, reside in goodness. Because we have a lot of people, they'll spot your flaws, and they'll spot our multiplicity, and they'll call you out on one thing they see, but they have not risen past the pairs of opposites. It's still a deluded mind that does not recognize the sovereign and the supreme. So what incites action, and the threefold nature of it is such that the action that is obligatory and is done without love or hate, attachment or aversion, by one who desires no fruit, is the least the attachment to it, is to has let go his attachment to fruit, and he's free from that attachment. These actions are characterized by sattva. So we went into the quality of knowledge here. Now we go into action. It's pure when the attachment to the fruit is released. But the action that is performed with much effort by one who seeks to gratify his desires or is prompted by a feeling of I, such as I am the doer, that is of the nature of rajas. It's grasping at a doership. It is not seeing from wholeness. So whereas the action that is undertaken through ignorance, without regard to consequence or loss or injury, and without regard to one's ability, that action is said to be of the nature of tamas, or not recognizing pure knowledge itself. So the doers, the three kinds of doers. The doer who is free from attachment and egoism, who is endowed with fortitude and zeal, who is unaffected by success and failure, he is said to be of the nature of sattva. Goodness means he's gone beyond the pairs of opposites. He's free from attachment. The egoism of the I is transcended, for it's recognizing that which is beyond the I. So, but the doer who is passionately attached to action, desirous of its fruits, who is greedy, violent, and impure, is moved by joy and sorrow, means he's still perturbed by the opposites, is declared to be rajas, passion. And the doer who is unsteady, vulgar, arrogant, deceitful, malicious, indolent, ignorant, despondent, and procrastinating is said to be of the nature of tamas, ignorance. And one does not see. So, all do have understanding is of three kinds. Here for me, Arjuna, the threefold distinctions of understanding and stability, according to the gunas, the forces of nature. O Dhananjaya says, I will explain this severally and fully. That the distinctions are very precise. And these forces of nature are always present. Advice, if you're not catching the gist, so for reside in goodness, reside in the good-heartedness. The understanding that determines for a man the path of action and renunciation, right and wrong, action. So the understanding that determines action and renunciation, both right and wrong action, that determines for a man fear and fearlessness, what is bondage and liberation. That, O Arjuna, is of the nature of sattva. So that kind of understanding of the spirit pours forth as goodness. The understanding that gives a distorted apprehension of dharma and adharma, just righteousness and unrighteousness, of what ought to be done and what not ought to be done, that is of the nature of rajas. So it's distorting. You feel confusion, a distortion between what to do and what not to do. The mind is anxious, or it's rajas. The knowledge is not present on this is what should be done. But that understanding, buddhi, as it's called, buddhi, that the understanding that being enveloped in darkness, it regards righteousness and unrighteousness and reverses all values. That apart is of the nature of tamas. This is when it becomes flipped. What is good is now bad, and what's bad is now good. What is now dark is now light. What's light is now dark. You're afraid of the light. You go to the dark. Or you're afraid of the dark. You go to the light. Still, the fear and the understanding is not there. Not beyond the pairs of opposites. The firmness, though, the stability of mind, that is accompanied by an unswerving concentration, a focus, and by which one controls the activities of the mind, the pranas and the senses. That, O Arjuna, is of the nature of sattva. So, stability here is that of the mind, which is the intellectual component, which steers the senses. This is your choice. The pranas, this is the life breath. This is under control, and the senses, seeing, hearing, tasting, touching, smelling. That stability is sattva. But the stability by which one holds fast to dharma, pleasure, and wealth, desiring the fruit of each through an intense attachment, that, O Arjuna, is of the nature of rajas. So he uses the word dharma here because this dharma, it can be referred to concepts, traditions, and rituals that one can be attached to. So that attachment to the traditions, the attachment to the pleasures that one gets from following these rituals and traditions, or the wealth that may accrue from such, this is of rajasic quality, passionate quality, but not the kind of control that was being referred to in sattva, in goodness, when one has control of the mind, the energy, and the five senses. I'll continue. But that stability by which confused person is unwilling to give up his sleep. Sleep is characterized by the ignorance. Unwilling to give up fear, his grief, his despondency, and even sensual desire. That, apart, is the nature of tamas. The rationalize, why should I give it up? Why should I control it? So, originally, this path, as we discovered in the early chapters, is not based on a lack of self-control. Self-control is fundamental for this whole process. So, after understanding these threefold divisions of sattva, rajas, and tamas, and the several factors here, recommendations always reside in goodness. Krishna says, and now hear from me, O Bharata Prince, three kinds of happiness. The happiness that one enjoys in this life. The happiness in which a man, he comes to rejoice by practice, and that which he reaches the end of pain, and that which is like a poison at first, but like nectar in the end. That happiness born of clear knowledge of the self is said to be of the nature of sattva. One of my favorite statements here in this regard is that happiness is from the things that may feel like poison at first, but then turns out to be like nectar. Whereas the demonic-oriented beings, they want to do the things that are nectar, very pleasurable at first, and then it turns out to be poison. This is a distinction of goodness here. If you can discern this, things that may feel like poison in the beginning, but then turn out to be nectar. It's key advice. So, it says, Rajasic happiness is such that which arises from the contact of the senses, the sight, with the form, the tongue, with the taste, etc., with the senses with their objects, and is like nectar at first, but like poison in the end. That is said to be of rajas. See, sattva feels like poison in the beginning, nectar in the end. Rajas feels like nectar in the beginning, and poison in the end. Notice the difference. This is why he said that the threefold gate to hell, to the lower realms, is of the quality of rajas. This is lust, anger, and greed. So that quality, chasten those desires. The reason you want to control it is because it doesn't lead to happiness. There's sorrow attached to it. But that delusion, that which deludes the soul in the beginning and even after its end, and which springs from sleep, sloth, error, that happiness is declared to be of tamas. So the things that you think will make you happy, I'm just not going to do anything, I'm just going to rest, I'm not going to partake, it does not make you happy. The stability of mind is not there to actually go and look and to be in the world, look into the darkness, transform it, go into the poison, have it be transformed to light. This requires a stable mind. The stability, as I said in the last verse, of the mind, the senses, and the breath, the pranic winds. And I did a whole course on the pranic winds if you want to stabilize it. 28 lessons there. I'd check it out. It's fire. And it's on BitChute. It's free for you. I left it out in the open for those who find it, if you're lucky. So the topic is such. So there's no creature here on earth, says Krishna, nor among the gods in heaven who is free from the three gunas born of Prakriti. See, not even the gods, all beings must experience nature. They must experience his kingdom. Even the duties of Brahmins, Kshatriyas, Vaisyas, Sudras have been assigned according to the gunas born of their nature. Everyone, all beings, these three forces of Sattva, Rajas, and Tamas are always present. But control of the mind, control of the senses, austerity, cleanliness, forbearance, and uprightness, piety is also knowledge, realization, and faith. You gotta have faith. These are the duties of a Brahmin, born of his own nature. So Brahmin is not something that it's not something that you hold on to as like a social order. These are the qualities. If you possess these qualities of self-control, austerity, cleanliness, forbearance, knowledge, and faith, that's a Brahmin. And beyond the caste system. It's going beyond that. And these are ways to distinguish what one's nature is generally like. But the nature of a Kshatriya, which is a warrior, is one of heroism. He's a hero in the world. His spirit is high, his firmness, his stability, his resourcefulness, his dauntlessness in battle, the valor, prowess, generosity, and sovereignty. These are the duties of a Kshatriya, born of his own nature, self-born, comes from within. Not something that you acquire through force. But if your nature is something different, such as of a Vasya, you may be tend towards agricultural, cattle rearing, trade, or the duties of being a merchant. This is a Vasya, born of his own nature. But the duties of a Sudra is born of his own nature, and this is consisting of service towards others. And this is interesting how I've compared this to the teachings of Christ in a way that I was associating Christ's message with actually being of service, to be a service to the world, to all beings, to all these four castes here, the Brahmins, the Kshatriyas, the Vaisas, and Sudras. The disciple is actually one who's willing to act, to release the fruit of their ego and their attachment to the results, and to humble themselves and be in service to all these castes, all these beings, without wavering who's worthy and who's not worthy. That is through humility and resourcefulness, pure surrender of the ego, and which requires faith, which requires resting in sattva, goodness, and the spirit of the Purusha, which is the real doer residing within the hearts of all beings. Sometimes it has to guide the beings to that realization. And it's not easy, because you have the Kshatriya in you, you have the warrior in you, you have the Brahman, the sage, the enlightened one already within you. I said these are your natures. But depending on your karma and the actions that you've done, you will have different fruit and different rewards for your actions. So all these qualities that I just mentioned here, whether you have heroism, control of the mind, you're tended towards merchandise or travel, exchanging, etc., or you're intending towards being of service here, will depend on your nature. But Krishna's advice in this is you can purify, and this is the same message as Christ actually, to be of service, selfless service, to act unattached to the result, to the fruit. And this is why I said it's compatible. It's not saying something different. I really dissected this and looked at this, and I wouldn't be saying that if I believed otherwise. Well, we'll begin. So the happiness, both here and hereafter, if this is followed, man attains a high perfection by devotion to his own duty, to seeing his own karma. And hear from me, Arjuna, how perfection is attained by him who is devoted to his own duty, his own nature. This happens by worshiping Him alone, the Supreme Lord. And this requires humility to be of service. Worship is a service. This is an action. It's a yajna. That is not to be given up. When Arjuna asks, you say renounce action, but then should I renounce offering and sacrifice and austerities? No. He says no. Act. Release the attachment to the fruit. So by worshiping Him, the Supreme Lord, from whom all beings proceed and from whom the whole universe is pervaded, by worshiping Him through performance of duty does a man attain perfection. This is pure worship, pure offering through service. Better is one own's dharma, though imperfect, than the dharma of another well performed. So better to act from your nature than to try to act to be somebody else. He who does the duty ordained by his own nature incurs no sin. There's no error in this resolve. Only when we're trying to be somebody else, other than what our nature already is. Remember that the karma yogi, the one acting, is acting selflessly for purification of one's heart, to rest in the highest knowledge, the object of knowledge, which is the Supreme Sovereign Lord. One ought not to give up the works which one is born, O son of Kunti, though it has its imperfections, for all undertakings are beset with imperfection as fire with the smoke. Everything you do may be imperfect, but it offers a reflection, a mirror, into our own attachments and fruits. It's a reminder to myself as well that even videos like this, you don't like to do it. If it's from the heart and you really want to be of service, it not only helps listeners, but it purifies you if it's a genuine offering. And I hope this comes off as a genuine offering, trying to portray something deeper and subtle and sincere. So, the results of karma yoga are such that he whose mind is not attached to anything, who has subdued his heart, he's controlled the passions, and who is free from all longing, he, by renunciation, attains supreme perfection, which is freedom from the action. Perfection. It has been attained at last. He says it is doable. You can do it. But learn from me, says Krishna, how one who has reached such perfection realizes Brahman, the self, which is the supreme consummation of knowledge. So, this consummates in one who is endowed with a pure understanding. He's restraining the self with stability of mind. He's turned away from the sound, taste, touch, and smell, and all the other objects of the senses. He's gone beyond the pairs of opposites of even love and hatred. He dwells in solitude, eats little. He controls the speech, the body, and the mind. He's ever engaged in meditation and concentration. He cultivates freedom from passion. He forsakes the conceit and the power, goes beyond pride and lust, wrath, and the possessions. His heart is tranquil and is free from the ego. He becomes worthy of becoming one with Brahman, one. Total identity with Brahman. Yes. So having become Brahman and becoming tranquil in heart, he neither grieves nor desires. He treats alike all beings and attains supreme devotion to me. Me is the supreme, the unmanifest. And by that devotion he knows me, and he knows what I am. In truth, I am that, and I am who I am. Then, having known me in truth, he forthwith enter into me. He says that it's through devotion that this door is entered into. So, even though engaged in all kinds of actions, a man who takes in refuge in the Supreme reaches through grace an eternal and imperishable abode. So, engaged in action, they're still selfless. He's taken refuge in the Supreme Self, and through grace you reach eternal life. Surrendering all thought, all action, regarding the highest regarding me as the supreme goal, says Krishna, and practicing steadiness of mind. Fix your heart constantly on me. Fixing your heart on me, you will overcome every difficulty by my grace. But if from self-conceit you do not listen, you shall fall. This is a steadiness of mind. Fix your heart on the goal. Grace shall be bestowed. Perform your action unattached to the result. It's through the devotee who does this, as I said, through faith, that the door is opened. If, though, you indulge in conceit, if you say to yourself, I will not fight, if you do this in vain, your nature will compel you anyway. It will make you act regardless. So you're bound by your own karma, O son of Kunti, which is born of your very nature. You're born of your own karma. And what through delusion you seek not to do, you shall do even against your will. Drawn by one's own karma, the Lord dwells in the hearts of all beings, O Arjuna, and by his illusion he causes them to revolve as though mounted on a machine. It's the Lord through his illusion, through the Maya, comprised of the gunas. So take refuge in him alone. Take refuge in the Lord alone with all your soul, and by his grace will you gain that supreme peace in the everlasting abode. I like that word, the everlasting abode. If I were to tie that into Christianity, that would be the kingdom. The everlasting abode. Thus has wisdom more profound than all profundities been declared to you by me. Reflect upon it fully and act as you will. Again, listen to my supreme word. The profoundest of all, you are well beloved of me. He's saying you are beloved. I love you, says Krishna. I love you. You are beloved. Therefore, I will tell you what is for your good. This is a sincere advice. This is the pinnacle here. It says, fix your heart on me. Give your love to me. Worship me. Bow down before me. So shall you come to me. This is my pledge to you, for you are dear to me. Abandon all concepts and come to me. Abandon all traditions and come to me. Come to me alone for shelter. Come to me for refuge. I will deliver you from all the sins. And don't grieve to go beyond. My recommendation, says Krishna, to not speak about it to one who is not austere in life, who does not practice as such, or who doesn't have devotion, nor to one who does not wish to hear, nor to one who speaks ill will. I know if you've gone this far and you're listening, that says not you. You're good-hearted if you've gone this far. So the merit of teaching this Gita to others is such that he, with supreme devotion, teaches this deeply profound philosophy to those who are devoted to the Lord shall without question come to me, says Krishna. So I teach this. I've taught the Gita in its fullness for those who've listened. And the results of the studying of this is such that he who will by study the sacred dialogue of ours, by him shall I have been worshipped through knowledge as a sacrifice. Such is my final judgment. Through the knowledge of sacrifice, one has let go their thoughts or feelings and opinions, and the Gita serves as a great guide and direction for mankind. So the results of hearing this are such that the man who hears this, who has faith, he's free from malice, he's free from ill will, free from anger. Even he is liberated from all these false views and shall attain happy regions of the righteous. Thus, it's been heard by you, Arjuna, says Krishna, with an undivided mind. Now I ask you for confirmation. Has your delusion of this been cleared? That was born of ignorance, born of tamas. Has it been destroyed, O Dhananjaya, O Arjuna? Krishna, from above, he wants to know. He loves you, so he's come to ask this question for the final clarification. Has this helped you? Has this brought clearer understanding? Or have I only made it worse for you? And Arjuna, being his disciple, says, my delusion is gone. It's free. I have regained my memory through your grace, for he's seen his ultimate form. O Krishna, I am firm, I'm free from doubt, and I act according to your will. So this ends with Sanjaya, the charioteer, narrating this to the blind king Dhritarashtra. And Sanjaya says, thus did I hear of this wonderful dialogue between Krishna and the high-souled Arjuna, which caused my hair to stand on end. And through the grace of Vyasa, I heard this supreme and profound yoga direct from Krishna, the Lord of Yoga himself teaching it. O King, every time I remember this wonderful and sacred dialogue between Krishna and Arjuna, I rejoice again and again and over again. And often as I remember that most wonderful form of Krishna, great is my astonishment, O King, and I rejoice again and again. So, this ends. It says at the side, Sanjaya's final statement regarding this dialogue, his firm resolution concluding it. He says that the side that has Krishna, who is the Lord of Yoga, and the side that has Arjuna, the wielder of the Gandiva, there will surely be fortune, there will surely be victory, there will surely be prosperity, and there will surely be good conduct. I'm convinced of this. I do not doubt this. Thus ends the Bhagavad Gita. Om, peace, peace, peace. Peace be unto all. Om Tat Sat. Thus ends the Lord's song. This is great contemplation. And I hope I did service to you in presenting the Gita in its entirety. I know it's been imperfect. And just as Krishna says, it's all actions are imperfect. There's some defect within it all. But even this is my mental sacrifice and the knowledge of releasing my attachment to how it should or should not be. Maybe in the future, I can present it from a different lens. Maybe give a more clear and better understanding. But I'm content with this now that I offer this unto you. That if this has brought fruit in your life, may it blossom forth in your life. May it bring forth clarity and understanding. May it bring forth liberation, all the wishes and fulfillments of your desires and of your heart. And may it bring you closer in faith and understanding. Through that faith, may we always be connected. I hope this was meaningful for you. And I'm going to continue with various teachings. But the Gita, for me, was always a cornerstone. It was always a foundation on which to build my understanding upon. And when I discuss other things in other videos, such as if I were to go into the teachings and parables of Christ, it doesn't change this understanding. There's no contradiction here. So I leave this with you. May it be fruitful in your life, and may that understanding multiply. Om Tat Sat.